if you can conceive of pushing yourself into a space that goes beyond the bounds of what you believe yourself to be capable of, that possibility of reframing what now your new normal ends up being is this permission to believe that you can just go do bigger things, more ambitious things, things that push yourself just a little bit further.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to this week's episode of It Takes Grit. Look who is on your screen today. And if you are listening in, OMG, I am super blessed and I'm so excited. Guys, we have the one, the only, the man of many talents. He was a big dog at Disney. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's a dad, he's a coach, he's a podcast host, a speaker. Let's give it up for Mr. Dave Hollis. Woo! Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. Dang it, I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited. And today, my audience loves knowing, how do you stay in shape with a million kids? How do you balance life? How do you stay healthy? How do you stay living in your purpose? And I was like, this is the man. This is the guy that is going to give us the juice and all of the things to help us really create that life that we want. So first of all, Dave, how's your morning going? What have you been up to this morning?
I mean, so far, so good. It's such an interesting thing. Today, I am doing coaching immediately after we have our conversation. I was up early reviewing my notes for everything I try to bring to the audience. And it turns out that the sitter that I normally have on a day like today has jury duty. So unbelievably, my morning started with my 4-year-old waking up in bed next to me. God bless her. She had a nightmare at 4 a.m. And at about 8:30 this morning, asking if she could jump in the pool, which felt like a very, very good choice. It was raining outside at the time, and I was jumping on a phone call at 9. So I have a funny picture that I sent to my lady friend Heidi of me on a call with my notes for my coaching, with my 4-year-old daughter wearing her goggles in the rain with a bathing suit outside my window. Perfectly fine and normal day. Thank you very much.
And that is what we call Tuesday.
That is Tuesday, correct. That is just a normal Tuesday here at the Hollis house.
Oh my goodness, I love it. Well, those of you who are listening, we're going to really dive into everything about health and fitness, how to stay healthy on the go. We're going to talk about Dave's grit to get to where he is right now, and also about pivot. I'm also going to talk about your tattoo. I'm super excited to go down that route as well. So first of all, Dave, where are you from and how did you get to this moment today? Tell us a little bit of a backstory about you.
Yep. So I grew up not far from where you are right now, Southern California, went to school at Pepperdine, started immediately out of school in entertainment, where for a little more than 20 years, I had a career that started at Fox, saw me inside of a talent management agency, spent some time in grassroots marketing where I was a tour manager, among other things, and then found me inside of the Walt Disney Company, where for 17 years, I worked inside of this biggest media conglomerate in the planet. Last 7 of those years, I was the head of sales for the movie studio. Fantastic experiences, each of them. And yet, I found myself at the end of my time inside of entertainment, wondering why, as I was crossing this threshold from 30 to 40, I didn't feel all the things that I ought to be feeling with the title I had or the security I had or the status I had, and decided about 3 years ago to make a big leap from working inside of entertainment to becoming an entrepreneur, in entrepreneurship to even in that, started in working inside of a company and then ultimately listening more and more to my intuition and the kind of whisper inside that said, hey, you probably have some things you could do on the forward front of this business as opposed to the behind the scenes helping this business grow side. And so I wrote my first book. I started doing my own coaching, hosted a podcast. And the work that I do now is just this attempt to put tools in people's hands that might afford them the opportunity to become who they were put on this planet to be. It has, been so much change, so much transformation. And so much of what I end up talking and teaching about in real time is about challenging the idea of what certainty has meant or the safe harbor that you may find yourself docked to has meant in your life, and what pushing through fear and leaning into learning for the opportunity for growth might mean if you're willing to leave some of what you've known for what you need.
That's beautiful. I love that. And so now you're in front of the camera, and before, like for 17 years, you're behind, like you're the behind the scenes guy. What do you feel is like more natural to you? Do you like being in front of the camera? Like, how does that feel?
Well, what's interesting is I've been spending a lot of time asking these questions, especially in the midst of a ton of transition and transformation in the last couple of years of my life. And that is, who did I want to be before I became who I became? And I think for anyone who's listening, if you're feeling stuck, or if in some way you're not totally feeling what you'd hope to in the realm of fulfillment, if you can reconnect to a little bit of who you wanted to be before, right? What did the 19-year-old version of you dream about? I had this chance encounter about 2 years ago to sit on a plane next to Dan Rather. And as it turns out, my 19-year-old self hoped that I would become Dan Rather when I was a grown-up. And as much as I got into entertainment in some respects because I thought that maybe I might find myself as someone who could report or use the skills that I've been blessed with in speaking, or my ability to take information and consolidate it in a way that maybe makes it digestible, I lost a little bit of it as I became the manager of teams, or someone that was a little more with some of the pragmatic wiring, an operator that was helping put the business together, the how of how a business achieved the what that it was aspiring to achieve. And I realized in this last couple of years, like I had this chance meeting and I'm like, man, that kid who was an anchor in college of the local public access station, the guy who was the DJ of that vaunted 2 a.m. slots of the college campus radio station, like those are some of the things that I just like, I loved so much. And in a weird way, as much as I'm not reporting on the news, and thank goodness for that, I am in being an author or a podcaster or someone who uses social media or coaching. I am a reporter of sorts. And so I find myself back to a little bit of who I hoped to be before I became who I became. And there's something, I think, for any of us that, like, when you can pull on where you have curiosity, play in that space until it becomes passion. For me, playing in that passion space and then affording some of that passion to serve other people is what allows that passion to become purpose. When you can connect to purpose, all of a sudden that opportunity for fulfillment becomes something that can happen. But it starts by actually being in a space where you're just connected to why you think you are here on this planet and what you have the most passion for in the first place.
That's such a great reminder to think, like, is what I have right now what I want in my life, in my career, in my relationship? Because, we get into relationships and careers and we go, oh, this is just how it is. And then we need this wake up call to be like, but this isn't what I want. This isn't how I thought my relationship was going to be. This isn't how I thought my career was going to be. This isn't how I thought my friends were going to be. So I think that's a really great reminder just to say, like, oh, is this what I originally wanted? And not just to settle because you're like, well, it's pretty good. Like, I've got it okay. I've got it good, and think like, actually what I wanted was something great. So that's a great reminder.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, like, so much of us playing the roles we believe that we're supposed to play to be the people that would be accepted or affirmed or loved. Like, we all have these very basic desires and wanting to be seen and loved and believed to be enough. But a lot of times we end up operating against the way that the frame, the societal construct, the story that was told to us by our family of origin or our religion or whatever it might be that we're growing up. There is a right way to be seen as enough, or there is a right way to be seen as a good girl or a real man. And so we start trading off a little bit of what our intuition or gut may be telling us, or even some of what we might find in divine inspiration for how we're, put on this planet for a reason, in exchange for being accepted, in exchange for being seen as right or good. And anytime you live in dissonance, where there just isn't integrity between what you know to be the truth of who you are here to be and how you're serving the needs or the rules or the programming that might have existed from your childhood, man, it's really hard to feel fulfilled. I've been really like stuck on this idea for the last year, a big tumultuous change-filled year in my life. And that is, how do I honor the intention of my creator.
Mhm.
Right? Like I believe that each of us, you were, I was, every single person who's listening, right? Like we were each individually very specifically designed with deliberate intention. And the question that we have to ask ourselves every single day is, how are we today, and this the only day that we can control, honoring the intention of that creation? How are we taking the unique experiences, right? Like you have had, I have had, anyone who's listening is, we've only each had the experiences that we've each had. We all only have the, like the talents, the gifts that are exclusively and uniquely designed inside of us. And how we take and make the most of those experiences and those skills and bring the light that was bestowed in us and bring that light to the world, that ends up being the way that you can unlock what ends up feeling like something that matters. Like, do I matter? Yeah, you matter when you actually are able to honor the intention of why you're here on this planet. And so if, again, like you kind of come back to that big question, like what was the intention of the creator when you were given the very specific set of gifts and tools that you were given, and how in whatever you do in this day are you honoring that intention? If you can create integrity in how you show up today with that intention, I'll tell you what, you're going to sleep great at night. You're going to feel good about yourself. There'll be pride. And it may not be, by the way, connected necessarily to what society suggests, your parents were thinking, or the way that, you know, a good girl or a real man necessarily is supposed to show up inside of society. But if you can be comfortable in honoring that intention, there's freedom in that. And that is what I think each of us are here trying to achieve.
Yeah, and so often we're looking at what other people have that we forget, like, to actually look at ourselves and be like, but what do I have? And you'll lose that uniqueness about you, because you're like, this person's doing this and this person's getting this, and it's all about that comparison, which is, you know, in a social media world that we live in right now, you know, it's just part of our life. But I think that's such a great reminder to be like, you were born, you were created for a reason. And if you don't tap into your uniqueness and your abilities, then you're never going to reach your full potential, and you're never going to tap into that purpose. I love it. So before we got started, we were talking about some of your before and after photos. And I tell you what, you're like me. I've done a glow up. Like me, Rebecca Louise, when I was younger, not very hot, not very attractive. I was like, I'm peaking in my 30s. I'm like enjoying this right now. Because I never was the attractive or the cool kid at school. So tell me, when was fitness and health important to you? When did you make it a priority? Has it always been a priority? And I've seen some of the before and after photos, and you're like, you feel like you're feeling like the best version of you right now, physically too.
I am. What's crazy is like, I don't know that I appreciated the way that I had control over how indulging in or caring about my health, and I'm thinking more about holistic health, and I even just specifically physical health, would have an impact in how I feel and how I look and the way I have energy and the way I can show up for the people that I care about in my life. What's interesting specific to physical health, one of the things that was a big catalyst for the way that I started, for me, running has been a huge tipping point in how moving my body was affecting the way that I thought. And so I was stuck, very much stuck in that crossroads moment between leaving the Walt Disney Company, starting my entrepreneurial journey, stepping into being something of a reporter in this new version of my life. And in that stuck, I was not taking care of myself. In fact, I was doing the opposite in medicating at times with alcohol and other things, negatively coping with the way that I was feeling because of this feeling. And when I realized, oh, wow, like a negative mechanism like drinking, as a for example, it's not a local anesthetic. It's not something that can just take care of some of the ways that you aren't feeling good. It also eliminates the possibility for growth. It eliminates the possibility for feeling the joy. Find something else that I could indulge in when stress showed up, or imposter syndrome showed up, or any of the negative things that created any of my negative feelings. And so for me, running became this thing that was just this opportunity to get out on the roads in this beautiful combination of what I described as kind of therapy in church. I'd go on these long runs, process the things that I was thinking. It had an effect, yes, on some of what I was looking like physically, but more, it was this transformational opportunity to really connect with my feelings and question why I was thinking the things that I was thinking. And so that like toe dip into how a positive coping mechanism in moving my body could actually afford me the kind of growth that I was hoping for, just led to a bunch of additional insights in all areas of health. And so now I've tried to approach health with physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and relational health in a simple question that I frankly am asking about the next 3 to 6 months of life. And that is, what do I need in this season? Like, what do I need in this season against each of these 5 dimensions of health that would help me in indulging in these things, whether it's in my daily routine or in something I'm doing physically with a challenge or whatever it might be. Take one step closer every single day to this version of who I'd hope to become 3 to 6 months from now. And it's just been, it has been transformative, but it also is something that I think just kind of like compounds and builds on itself. And so like, as you start to see results in one area, it gives you confidence to believe that you're going to see additional results in another area. And so for me, like even just taking the running example, when I started running at 36 years old, I had not been a runner for my entire life. I started really with short distance and slow pace. And over time built it up to where I was doing half marathons and ultimately marathons. I started climbing mountains. Now I'm training for an Ironman in real time. And every time I was pushing myself to do something that was a little bit beyond what I believed I could handle physically, it was changing the way that I believed myself to be capable, yes, of physical things, but it was also in a world where life was showing up, equipping me with this ability to believe that I could handle things that were beyond what I thought I could previously handle, because I'd now reframed what I thought I could handle in these physical challenges. So the physical part has had this beautiful bleed back into the mental and emotional part. And it's part of, again, why like this holistic approach to health has been such an important part of transformation generally.
Boom. And I love it what you said, because when I'm doing my workout videos, I say, like, if we're holding a plank or if we're doing something, I'm like, you are building strength physically right now to give you the strength that you need in real life. Because if you can show to yourself, like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know that this was capable, or I was able to run a mile, I've never done that before, I was able to get to the top of this mountain, I was able to do this hike, it gives you this feeling of like such accomplishment that you're like, oh, if I can do this physically, like I'm mentally strong. Yes, my arms are strong and my body's strong, but like it's actually training your brain to be physically and mentally strong at the same time. So throughout Disney, were you doing much exercise? Were you working out at all? Were you eating healthy? What did that look like when you worked in kind of corporate?
I wish I could say I was. I mean, like, yes, I had a trainer for a stretch. I would intermittently, like indulge in. I had a nutritionist for a small window of time where I did want to understand a little bit better, like, how is this relationship between fuel and energy or fuel and mood a thing I can track so that I actually am putting my best foot forward? But it really hasn't been until the last couple of years that it's become something that's more religious in it being something that I'm dedicated to on an every single day basis. And in a weird way, like there's a part of me that's like, gosh, I'm 46. What if I had deployed some of the discipline that exists at 46 when I was 36, right? But like, who cares? I am in real time, and this may sound hubristic, but like I am in the best shape of my life. And in being where I am right now, I actually, because I am surprised by how far I can run or how much weight I can lift or the way that the moving my body is affecting the way that I can process my emotions and make space for them, I'm now pushing myself into additionally further and harder things that I didn't ever think myself a candidate for. And in a weird way, even though I'm 46, I kind of feel like, hey, the sky's the limit. I'm going to see how far I can go. My first Olympic triathlon is in July. I've never done it. I've never swam in open water. I don't want to drown. It feels like a good thing to not necessarily do. And yet I'm doing it in part because I know when I get to the finish line, it will reframe what I believe myself to be capable of and give me one more piece of evidence as I'm training for this Ironman that, yep, I know I could do that thing, so I know I can do this next thing. I had this really crazy experience. This wasn't the question, but I had this crazy experience at the end of 19 where I went to this event called 29029. And it was this thing where you climb up and down a mountain. For me, it was in Utah 13 times to replicate the experience of climbing to the top of Mount Everest. And I think you are friends with Jesse Itzler as well. So like, it's an event that Jesse does. And I had no concept of what I was getting myself into in like being fully like transparent. And about the second climb up, I was just like, what have I done? I have like put myself into this thing where each climb was about an hour and 45 minutes of the hardest workout I'd ever experienced in my entire life. And I just didn't know that I had what it took to make it 13 times up and down the mountain. I happened to, in that second descent, get into a gondola with Colin O'Brady, who Colin had just months earlier crossed Antarctica as a solo human being, dragging a sled across the continent. And I had this moment where the humanity of this person who was sitting across from me, who was not as tall as me, didn't have as big a build as me, but just drug a sled across the continent, had me questioning why I wasn't a human just like him who could do hard things. And I ended up finishing this climb with this divine moment early on in the climb, right? 13 times up and down. What's interesting about having finished this thing that was wildly bigger than I thought I could handle is the following weekend, I get to my Sunday run. And I had, previous to this mountain climb, been doing runs that were like 60 minutes or so, right? Like I'm doing like 5-6 miles in the neighborhood, 60 minutes. And here I've just completed a 35-hour thing, hour 45 up and down each time, 13 times back to back. And now the idea of doing a 60-minute run, not at altitude, not at temperature, not like in these extraordinary conditions, seemed ridiculous because I'd recalibrated what a long run ought to feel like. And so I get back from this mountain experience and I end up running 13.1 miles. I ran a neighborhood half marathon because what's 2 hours and 15 minutes when I've just had a 35-hour experience the weekend prior? And I end up having 19 consecutive neighborhood half marathons because my now new normal was established. That threshold was now, you just are a person who runs half marathons on Sundays. And on the 20th weekend, I ran my first marathon. And I think for anyone who's listening, right, like if you can conceive of pushing yourself into a space that goes beyond the bounds of what you believe yourself to be capable of, that possibility of reframing what now your new normal ends up being is this permission to believe that you can just go do bigger things, more ambitious things, things that push yourself just a little bit further. And for me, like that was the beginning of this entire transformation journey, where then in like the rear view of what now has been the last 2 years, everything that I pushed myself into was born in some ways out of having first put myself in a situation where I was faced with something that was wildly greater than I thought I could achieve.
Wow, I love that story. And it's about creating that new normal. I'm going to Everest next year, and my guide, he's done it 15 times. He's just summited again. Like he's unreal. But he kept telling me, like, we only ever do 20% of what we're capable of. We only even do not even 80%, like not 50%. Like we only get to 20% of what we're capable of because we're like, we don't know what the next level is. And so when you create that new normal, it's like in life, when you get over a fear, like when you've spoken in front of a group of 10 people, like, oh, you can easily, speaking in front of 2, you do 1,000 people, 100 people, no problem. But it's like, if you don't put yourself into those situations, those things that you found so challenging before will never feel easy. So I love that. And congratulations for finishing on that. Like it's huge. It's amazing. I've got lots of friends that are also doing it as well this year. Like I love Jesse Itzler. Like he's just like one of my favorite people on the planet. So I love that. So
you're going to Everest though. You're going to the actual mountain?
Yes, I'm going to summit. I was supposed to go in 2020, but obviously COVID. So I'm in the middle of training right now for next year.
Amazing. Congrats in advance. That's awesome.
Thanks. We'll see. We'll see what happens. As long as I come down, I don't mind if I lose a toe, just as long as I come back down, I'll be fine. Great. So you have all of these things going on. I mean, you're very busy. You've got, loads of kids, business. How do you fit in the fitness? Because, I hear it all the time. I just don't have time to work out. I don't have time to eat healthy. I'm like, you don't have time not to do that. So how do you put that into your schedule? And what does that look like? Like what's Dave Hollis's days look like with the schedule?
Well, I have to be a cyborg. I mean, like the things that I do happen in the same sequence every single day, in the same order, at the same time, so that I don't give myself even a window of an opportunity to negotiate with myself. And so, first thing, my day starts the night before, right? I have to be in bed at a certain time so I can get a certain amount of sleep, so I can have the kind of day that I'd hope for the next day. Yes, I have 4 kids. Yep, they have bedtimes, my bedtime, their bedtime, same bedtime. I try to get to bed somewhere in the like 9:30, 10 o'clock kind of time frame, get a good night of sleep. But my day starts with immediately walking. Number one, no snooze button. If you hit the snooze bar, you are first thing in the morning negotiating with yourself, which just as a precedent leaves open the possibility that you're going to negotiate other things when they come up. So if you've made a commitment, you're going to get up at a certain time, get up. I immediately get up and put on my workout stuff because I don't want to leave open the possibility that some unexpected thing is going to take me from, yep, I am going to work out to, oh, no, I can't because life. And so I get up, get my stuff on. I go immediately to the kitchen. I start my coffee. And as it brews, there's about 8 minutes of brewing time. I spend that 8 minutes on gratitude, right? Like, so I start my day trying to connect to what in the previous 24 hours I have to be grateful for. And it's not big stuff. It's tiny little moments. But if I can, because I'm doing it every morning, go into my day on the hunt for things to be grateful for, I will find those things. I then sit on my back patio. Manufacturing moments for neutral or peace have been such an important thing inside of a chaotic and crazy time of my life. And so I created something called the Patio of Peace. It is just outside my bedroom. I sit there, look out at nature, commune with God, do nothing. I'm not looking at my phone. I am seriously just trying to sit and get into neutral. I do it immediately after I've done my gratitude so that hopefully a foundation of something positive exists. And once I am done with that, I will open up my phone for the first time and take a look at what my calendar looks like and attempt to create an intention for the day. So what am I hoping to try and accomplish? How can I force rank what needs to be done so that I can do the first thing first, second thing second, third thing third? I make that as a list before I go and do my workout. And so I now, while I'm working out, have created a little bit of an inventory of what needs to be accomplished. And while I'm now spending the next 60 minutes or so moving my body, whether it's taking a quick run or inside of the gym, I just got this amazing thing called a tonal inside of my bedroom, whatever it ends up being, for those 60 minutes, I have started with gratitude, had a moment with God, spent some time in nature. I'm like, sitting hopefully in a peaceful place, but now know this is what my day looks like and can go through those thoughts of how to best accomplish it while I'm moving my body so that it's both a productive use of time physically, but also a productive use of time mentally. I get done, I have 3 boring eggs, take my supplement stack, like get myself ready for the day, and then get the kids up, ready for school, or now that we're in summer, ready to try and distract me while I work at home for the rest of the day. And then I go, right? And then I got to try to accomplish, as I said, the things that are most important in my day. If I can, I'm going to try and control my calendar so that in case I run into motivation fatigue or something that shows up in the balance of my day, taking care of the stuff that's most important in like the world of like a Gary Keller kind of what's the one thing you could work on that would make every other thing a little easier to handle? Well, I'm going to start with that first thing, whatever that thing is for the day. But working out for me or moving my body tends to be a thing that has to happen at the beginning of the day because I just know myself. Like I do have 4 kids. They have sports. They are, of course, interested in having me attend to entertaining them by the end of the day. And I also am, busy with a calendar's worth of stuff. And the idea of working out, and I will tell you this with like full transparency, yesterday, I did not get to my workout in the morning. And it was 9:45 at night, my bedtime. I was ready to go to bed and I opened up DMs. Someone said, hey, where was your workout of the day? Like, I'm also interested in accountability. So I post my workouts every day. And someone named Wendy T asked the question. And I was like, dang it, Wendy, you sent me the sign. So I immediately, I pulled open the tonal in my room and I ended up doing a 35-minute workout and I got the workout in. But I have also this unbelievable thing and a neighbor named Brady who has become this fantastic accountability partner. And we have decided that, hey, we're going to try and work out every single day. And whether it's that I'm going to run down, we're going to do a workout at his house, he's going to drive up. we are someone who, for each of us, ends up being the thing that says, hey, what are we doing, right? We're checking in the night before to confirm what it is that we're going to do. And that accountability keeps us on track.
I know for me that if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't happen. And I have to schedule in my workouts. It's like, it doesn't matter if I'm doing a home workout or if I'm actually going to the gym or I'm going to hot yoga. It's like, if it's not, because then it's not a real thing. Like Google Calendar for me is like my life. Like everything is in there. And, you know, whatever kind of job that you have or however many kids or what you've got going on, like just make it a non-negotiable. Get it in there. It's going to make you feel better. It's going to make you feel more alive. Like, you know, it's just, it has to be a part of your life, even just going for a walk, you know. And if it is 9:45 at night and you're just like, you know what, someone's calling me out, haven't done my workout, like let's make sure that we get that in. It's just making it a non-negotiable. So in terms of nutrition,
I do think just on that, I will just say this though, like on that point, like the times when I have been best, I mean, like the best version of myself, the most consistent, the version that feel like I am in integrity with who I say I want to be and how I'm showing up for the day. Though the times when that happens is when I've actually on a Sunday prior to the week in front of me, front loaded the scheduling, the meal planning, the coordinating, how I'm going to handle if I need to have a sitter come in for a day or whatever it might be. Like the times when I've done the front loading exercise, that's when I'm most effective. And so if you don't currently, plan out your week for the things that you actually know, but then also maintain a little bit of an attitude of flexibility, because life is inevitably going to throw some curveballs. If you plan something for Thursday and it doesn't end up showing up, knowing that you're going to have to roll with a punch, but still trying to stay consistent, that's when I'm most successful. And I will say, like, as much as it can be a little bit like maybe not as much fun on a Sunday, meal planning and meal prepping ultimately takes away some of the guesswork, but also the chance that my mood in the moment will influence a bad choice, right? Like I know who I am and how I want to feel. I understand the relationship between fuel and the choice that I might make when I am feeling fatigued or I don't want to have to deal with it. And if I can plan out what dinners are going to look like each day and what snacks I'm going to eat during the day on a Sunday, it just eliminates the possibility that some kind of situational thing is going to preempt who I'd hope to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. You know, I love
For
that.
real.
Yeah. You know, if I don't plan it out, and I do the same thing, like Sunday evening, it's like, you know, and sometimes it doesn't happen. You know, for example, you know, yesterday I did hot yoga on Sunday morning, but I was supposed to do it again on Monday morning, and I had this 2-hour massage where I was getting broken to pieces. Like I've never had such an intense massage. But I was like, oh God, keep going. I'm just breathing it out, right? And then I was like, next morning I was supposed to go at 6 a.m. I was like, body's just not feeling it. I'm gonna go for a walk later with my dogs instead. No problem. I got a workout in today. And you know, it's just about being flexible, but don't be too flexible. Like get like try and follow your plan as much as you can. One question I have for you, let's go back to your morning routine real quickly, is, you know, I feel like when you have purpose in your life, you get excited to wake up, right? Was there ever a moment in time, you say you don't hit the snooze button right now, but was there a moment in time where you did hit the snooze button? And was it because of a lack of purpose, or what is it that gets you excited to get out of bed?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like there were definitely times, especially at the end of my time in the entertainment like business world, where I didn't feel like my purpose or like the gifts or tools that existed inside of me were being fully exploited. And so I wasn't as excited. Like I was in the situation, to be honest, at Disney at the end, where the strength of the teams and the strength of the intellectual property were so good that I was getting straight A grades without having to necessarily study. And that was leaving me feeling something that, of course, I think anyone would probably feel. Not as excited to have to get up when you don't feel like you have to give your all or use every single tool that was gifted to you to get the work done. And so now, like, I get excited in part because I do not necessarily yet have mastery in most of the things that I am trying to do in my life. And so there's excitement. Some of it ends up being nervous energy. Like I'm getting ready to coach in 20 minutes from now. And I am still not someone who has been coaching for such a long period of time that it's not a thing that I still don't get nervous about, that I still don't have to do a lot of preparation for. So trust, I woke up this morning, I was like, oh, I got to figure out how best to have this conversation about challenging the relationship that you have with comfort and fear and learning and growth. And that's the thing I'm talking about today. And I jumped out of bed excited about it. I mean, there was a 4-year-old who had had a bad dream at 4 a.m. laying next to me, who'd been kicking me for the last 3 hours of the morning. Thank you very much. But I still, like, I was excited, got up and was like, like working through a little bit of this like teleprompter, as it were, that's going to be in front of me while I'm talking to these students. If you don't have something that, again, plays a little bit to your passion, or that doesn't challenge you to have to use the things that you uniquely have skills for, or that, I mean, God forbid, doesn't actually impact other people, you're going to struggle to feel excited about getting up. I mean, I really do think it comes back to those 3 things. Like, do you have passion? Is there something that has an opportunity for you to have mastery around this thing? And can it afford impact other people? If you can find something that does all 3, trust, you're not going to want to snooze. You're going to want to get up. And by the way, like, your version of getting up and my version of getting up, they can be totally different times. I'm not one that suggests that, oh, you've got to get up at a certain time to, get a start on your day. Whatever your day start ends up being, good for you and good for me. But you're going to jump out of bed if it ends up being something that you're passionate for, that you can develop some mastery around, and that actually impacts other people.
How much do you think that your circle of influence, or the people that you hang around with, has an impact on that excitement that you have when you wake up in the morning? When you're around, when you have, because I feel like proximity, like when you're around people who have like good energy and they're going, and, so often I hear clients are like, I'm really excited about this, but my friends aren't really excited about this, or they're not really going places. Like, how important is your circle?
Oh, I mean, like, it's everything. And I think it's a leading question, good question. But it's also like, if you end up having any kind of growth experience, but you are the only one of your circle who's having that growth experience, and you come back to your circle and end up the smartest person in your circle, the most driven person in your circle, the most imaginative person in your circle, the most positive person, you need a new circle. Because it's like this idea of crabs in a bucket, right? Like, as you start to reach for anything that ends up deviating from the norm of your circle, if you have a bucket of crabs, one crab starts to leave the bucket, what happens? All the crabs reach back up, pull that crab back down. There's nothing a circle of mediocre people like more than pulling someone who's trying to leave mediocrity and get them right back down, because that distance, that delta that might exist between your ambition and their settling for the status quo, reveals something in their not feeling something that you do in a way that triggers some of their own insecurities. And so, and that's one part. But the second part is, like, for me, I am now operating inside of some new spaces, and so finding people that are further along in their journey that can normalize some of the stuff that I'm experiencing earlier on in my journey, ends up giving permission to keep going inside of some of the stuff that ends up feeling harder on the days when I inevitably fail, when I, like, bump my head against something, or run into something that, of course, triggers some imposter syndrome or some insecurity of whether I'm qualified or worthy to do the work. And when I can be inside of a circle of people who are doing similar work, who are driven in a similar way for impact, who are trying to develop mastery around the service of tools to helping people have better lives, that they can say, oh, here's a hack that I figured out. Here's a tip or trick that I learned. Here's a resource that I listened to. And oh, by the way, the thing that you're feeling is totally normal. It just gives permission to get back up and keep going. Like, when you talk about grit or resilience or anything else, a lot of that ends up being about modeling, right? Like, if you can look at someone who's also already developed a degree of grit that you might aspire for, modeling that grit is part of how you end up developing it yourself. And if you don't have those kind of people in your circle, it's just not something that's going to be there for you to model in the first place.
And then it's just going to be it's so difficult. I mean, I remember, I went through a divorce, oh my goodness, like 6-7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, can't even remember now. But it was because there was my circle was just not there to, like, I didn't feel like I wasn't myself. I'd actually lost myself. I was hanging out with people who were partying and doing things that I wouldn't want to. And I started to go, more back into what I was doing before. I was a South of England field hockey player. I came back to fitness and health and do all of that. And we just drifted apart. And it was like, I felt so scared because I had nobody else. Like, I was in America, brand new country. I didn't know anybody, but I was like, I'm going to be better off on my own than I am in a group of people who just don't want the same things as me. I want to change the world. I want to make impact. I want to grow. I want to retire my parents. Like all of these things that I wanted. And so sometimes we feel like, well, we've got nobody else. So what should we do? It's better on your own. And then you're going to attract more people into your world when you just start to create space for new people. Like, I think that that's one of the most amazing things, is that we get so scared about losing people, but we don't realize what we're actually going to gain in the future.
Yeah, what's interesting too, there is something of a fallacy that we end up clinging to when it comes to deciding to cling to something that we know, whether it's a certainty, comfort. I call it a safe harbor, because we tend to believe that the things that exist today will exist in perpetuity. And all it takes is a year like 2020, where a global pandemic happens, or you get a diagnosis from a doctor, or there's downsizing at the office, or a relationship ends. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, there is this illusion of control that you have believed yourself to be in possession of that actually isn't real. And so I think, each have to decide, are we going to passively sit back and wait to react to the way that life ends up showing up for us? Or might we be the engineers of trying to create the circumstances that best build the kind of hoped for life that we want? If you can be a little bit more in that, I call it like the insurgent versus the incumbent. If you can be more of the insurgent, who's like trying to create the kind of circle, the kind of life, the kind of habits, the kind of routine, the kind of whatever it might be, you don't need necessarily the things that previously were a part of the confines of safety or security or comfort, because those things tend to be where growth isn't necessarily fostered. You have to find a way to push away from some of what you've known to find the things that you need, even though it requires facing your fear, even though it comes with reframing failure. If you're able to do it, growth happens, and it's only in a posture of growth that you can find a sense of fulfillment. And that's what I think, each of us is looking to be fulfilled, but we have to be growing in order to get there. And if we're too comfortable staying where we are, we'll never, ever get a chance to taste that.
I think that's so true, because, you have a tattoo that says ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. Tell us a little story. When did you get that? Is that a recent? There it is. Look at that. Boom. When did you get
There it is. I got it about 3 years ago. So in deciding to leave everything that I had known, right? I was the president of distribution at the Walt Disney Company. I'm working inside of the movie business on the Marvel, Disney, Pixar, Lucas brands. Like, everything there was good and should have, to be honest, felt different and better, and didn't. And so my decision to leave my career for my calling required that I was comfortable pushing away from a harbor that was so safe and so certain and had so much in status and other things that other people had afforded weight to, for the opportunity to grow in the choppy waters that exist beyond that safe harbor that I was comfortable with, but that in that safe harbor, I was clinging to a lot of familiar suffering, which play a small violin for me, suffering inside of a job that was great, but I wasn't feeling great. I was stuck and not growing because, again, there wasn't as much a challenge and not as much an exploitation of the gifts that existed inside of me, inside of such a rich environment. And so when I decided to leave, I had to face the things that anyone who decides to leave has to face. All the fears of being judged, of the opinions of other people, of whether I was qualified to do the work, of what it might mean to fail, all those things. And so I got the tattoo as a reminder. It's a John Shedd quote, that I am built for this. And if you're listening to this, the idea that you also have been built for the choppy waters that exist beyond your comfort zone is a thing that you have to cling to and remind yourself of every day. And so I got the tattoo more than anything as a thing I could look at in the mirror on the days when I wake up, not totally believing that I can handle the inevitable choppy waters that exist when you push yourself into new spaces. But I really do believe you're either growing or you're dying. There isn't an in-between. You're either growing or you're dying. And you cannot be fulfilled when you're in a dying state. It's an impossibility in a dying state to feel a sense of fulfillment. So if you want to grow, there is only a certain like set of variables that have to exist if you want to be in a growth state. And part of that is facing your fears, and part of that is reframing failure, and part of that is pushing into things that you cannot yet do well, so that you do not yet do well in them, so that in not doing well in them, failing, you can learn from those failures and ultimately take the breadcrumbs that those failures provide and apply them to how you can become better. That's growth in its most basic form. And so as much as like people don't love the idea of failing, I don't like to fail. I've come to appreciate that like becoming the captain of a ship out at sea in the choppy waters is a thing that is a prerequisite for having growth as a part of my story. And I want growth as a part of my story because being fulfilled is a thing that I have been on a mission for since I got the tattoo 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so, like the idea that, hey, a ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships were built for. It is certainly easier. It's certainly safer, you could argue, to stay inside of suffering that to stay connected to familiarity that you can in some ways predict. But if you're looking for something that is about fulfillment, if you're looking to honor the intention of your creator, it will definitely require you to push into spaces that you are not yet great at, that will challenge your insecurities, that will make your imposter syndrome come to life, but that in that choppy water, ultimately make you fail so that you can learn, and in that failure, start to grow.
And just get excited about the journey. That's what it's all about. Be excited about the journey that you're on. Enjoy the growth, enjoy the challenges, and it's all there to help us reach our full potential and ultimately make more impact in the world. That's really, that's what I'm here for. I know that's what you're here for. It's really just to change worlds and change lives. So tell me, what is the thing as we wrap up here? I don't want to take up more of your time, but what are you most excited about for 2021? I know you've got books coming out. I know that you have a really great kids book as well. I've seen some of the drawings, so fun, but what are you most excited about for the end of this year?
Well, to your point, my next book is called Built Through Courage, and it comes out in October. And so I'm very excited about that. Yeah, just all about, again, this idea of going from your safe harbor through the ravine of fear into learning to ultimately fulfill yourself with growth. That comes out last week in October. Excited about that. I am doing coaching right now inside of an amazing platform called Growth Day, where each month I and 12 other coaches jump into a live conversation with an awesome community of human beings. I have this great podcast called Rise Together that comes out. Each Thursday, we try to bring somebody in who's had a different life experience and create something of an empathy bridge. Maybe you could, by walking a day in the shoes of someone who's had a different kind of life experience, feel a little bit differently about their humanity and maybe even relate to them and their experience in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise. And I'm working on a kid's book based on a thing I do with my daughter, Noah, called Tea Time. It comes out actually February 22nd, 22. It's called Here's to Your Dreams, a Tea Time with Noah book. And I'm super, super excited about that. I'm excited about all the things. It's interesting. This last year has undoubtedly, without even a question, been the hardest and best year of my entire life. I went through a divorce in this last year. I transitioned in the last year away from a company that I was helping build into now doing work of my own. It's an awesome and terrifying thing to have a blank piece of paper when you find yourself transitioning out of something in identity or in work. And at the same time, there is something that is just so excited about writing new page of what the future ends up looking like. And so I got a website that's going to launch here in the next couple of weeks, some additional coaching that's going to end up launching. Any of it and all of it is truly following the signs of life for where I find the most passion for things I think might be most helpful for impacting other people and getting to start from scratch. Like I say, it's equal parts terrifying and exhilarating, but it's also become way more exhilarated than it was terrifying maybe a year ago, which is part of what is fun in the journey of becoming.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for these books. So excited for all of your coaching. And we're going to put all of the details of everything of Dave's below so that you guys can go follow him. I've been following you for years, maybe like coming up to 3 years. Like I love watching your stories. They're always so entertaining. You always got so much things going on. So you just bring such a great energy. And I just want to say thank you for being you, because you really are someone who's really special. Like, I hope that you know that. I know you have loads of people around you that tell you you're special, but you really just do have, something that is so humbling, so loving. You care, you understand, you see people. And I just want to say thank you so much for bringing light and positivity in my life. I'm super appreciative of you. So thank you so much for this time on this podcast. Guys, give it up for Dave. I mean, just unreal. He just gave us so much value, so much love and care. Go follow him. And thank you so much for watching this week's episode of It Takes Grit. My name's Rebecca Louise, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.